We want to reacquaint you with your own guidance system. And it is our desire that as this day unfolds, that you will come into keener, more consciously focused awareness that you are a magnificent person and that you deserve well-being, and that it is offered to you constantly, and that you only have to relax subject by subject and let it in. We want you to realize that you have at your immediate fingertips the resources to achieve anything that you desire. We want you to understand that there is not anything wrong with your learned resistance, but you will feel better as you deliberately release it. So, there is allowing of what? Connection to source. And there is resistance. Resistance to what? Connection to source. So there is allowing and feeling good, which is allowing what? Allowing alignment with source. Or there is resistance or negative emotion, not feeling so good. And of course, there are all of the degrees in between. And on this emotional scale, we think it is comfortable to look at it this way. This vibrational scale, all the way from feeling empowered to feeling disempowered, are ranges of emotion. The more disempowered you feel, the more you use words like fear, the more you use words like despair, discouragement, depression. The more empowered you feel, the more you use words like freedom, joy, exhilaration, passion. All of these emotions, no matter what you call them, are just varying degrees of your conscious awareness of your innate freedom or lack thereof. In other words, you are so free you can choose bondage, but it is the perception of freedom that equals your vibration. When you perceive yourself to be free, you feel elation, because in that perception you are focused in a way that you are allowing your connection to source and clarity and all abundance of things you consider to be good. But when you perceive yourself to not be free, then in that perception, which is nothing more than a focus, perception, focus, musing, pondering, imagining, observing. In other words, these are all just words that mean the same thing, what I'm giving my attention to. So when you give your attention to something that causes you to have the perception that you are not free, then the emotion that ensues is the emotion that feels like lack of freedom. Lack of freedom is an illusion. It doesn't exist because nobody can get in your head and nobody can demand your thought. And since nobody can think inside your head, then no one can affect your vibration. You're in charge of the way you think. Therefore, you're in charge of the way you feel. And when you start saying, nothing is more important to me than that I feel good, what you're saying is, nothing is more important to me than that I keep my valve open. Nothing is more important to me than that I keep my alignment with source energy. Esther got into the hotel room last night and wanted to get onto the internet so that she could download the registration for this workshop. And she plugged in all of her wires. She's done it many times. High-speed internet in this hotel. It is delightful. And so she plugged in all of her wires and pushed the button, and nothing was there. The dialogue on her computer said the connection failed. So Esther did what a wise computer genius always does. She checked all of her connections and made sure that her settings were all in the right place, as she has done so many times before. And still, nothing came through. And so Esther got looking at the little wire that came from the wall up onto the desk, and she thought, you little bugger, you are the culprit, aren't you? There's something about you. And so she crawled under the desk and saw where it was plugged in and unplugged it and plugged her wire directly into that and got right online. In other words, there was just something in the line that was not making the connection. And no matter how many times Esther pushed her button, nothing would come through. The signal could not come through because there was vibrational misalignment. Sometimes you have yourselves fixated vibrationally in a way that you have vibrational misalignment. Sometimes when you don't have enough money and you're aware that you don't have enough money and you talk about not having enough money and you talk about it enough that you feel the discomfort of not having enough money so that you actually feel discouraged, which is the indicator that you're focused in a way that is disallowing the connection to what you are wanting. Sometimes when you are doing that, you are not aware that you've got your wire plugged in a way that you can't possibly get what you want. And so you keep trying. Esther could have pushed that button 1,000 times last night. She could have banged the computer on the desk. She could have reinstalled all of the system software in her computer. She could have gone to great expense of time and energy and money. And still, she could not have accomplished what she needed to accomplish because the alignment was not in place. And so often we see you offer your action to try to make up for your vibrational misalignment, but it is action in futility. And then you get discouraged, and then you pronounce yourself incapable or not good at it or unworthy, when all along there's just been a little vibrational misunderstanding. And you know what is at the heart of your vibrational misunderstanding? We're just going to give it to you straight out. You've forgotten that you're supposed to feel good. And for some reason that is beyond us, well, really nothing is, but we don't like to think about it. You don't insist on feeling good. You put up with not feeling good. You allow yourself to be ornery. And then you justify why you are. You allow yourself to be unhappy, and then you just explain all of the reasons that you are. And we want you to start demanding of yourself focus that lets you be happy. Jerry and Esther were on their way to Decatur from their last event. Decatur is where their motor coach was born. And when they get in the area, they always stop in to have a few things tweaked back into place. And they had a short list with 2 things that were rather significant. And so they called to let them know they were coming, and a nice person explained to them that the next available appointment was at the end of October. And they explained that the end of October they couldn't be nowhere near there. And the nice person said, well, you are free to drop in. And Jerry and Esther said, well, what does that mean? And they said, you're free to come and stay in the parking lot, and if we have an opportunity, we'll try to work you in. And Esther said, well, what kind of guarantees that we'll get in are there? And the nice man said, none whatsoever. And Esther said, well, what is your guessing from what you know is on the schedule and from what you already see in the parking lot? Do you think it is worth our while to come, because it's a long way out of our way? And the nice man said, you are free to drop in. And Esther said, but if you were standing in our shoes, would you drop in? And he said, we welcome you. We invite you to drop in. And so Jerry and Esther looked at each other, and then they began to remember that even with an appointment, they have had sort of uncomfortable experiences there. But there were some things that they really wanted to be tended to, and so they decided that they were going to drop in. And as soon as they decided that they were going to drop in, they began feeling tense about it, as they began to remember what it's like to be there and what it's like to hope that someone will come and work on your coach and see them not coming to work on your coach. And so as Jerry and Esther began to tense in anticipation of dropping in, Esther said, maybe we should just save ourselves the trouble and not drop in. Now, we would say, go or don't go. Go and make yourself feel comfortable, or don't go and make yourself feel comfortable. But don't go and feel uncomfortable, or don't not go and feel uncomfortable. In other words, energy alignment is what matters. So Esther said, you know, they are very nice people there. And there's a lot of talent in that group. And it's possible that they might just get all caught up. And what we really need to be attended to is not very time-consuming, any of it. And as she and Jerry chatted over about a 5-mile and 5-minute conversation, they lined up. In other words, the feeling of anxiety lifted off of them. So they arrived, parked in the parking lot. It was nearly dark. Never saw the parking lot more full of coaches that were there to be repaired. took a little dip in their feeling of well-being, and then began massaging themselves back into a place of feeling good by saying, no problem, we have to be somewhere. We're plugged in. We can sit here and work. We can sit here and do our work as easily here as anywhere. There is no inconvenience to us now that we're here. These are very nice people. Chances are they'll work us in. And you know, Cincinnati is not so far. We could leave the coach there and drive down in our Tahoe. And you know, Detroit is not so far. We could even leave it all through the week if we needed to. They massaged themselves back into vibrational alignment. And then they set the alarm for 5 a.m. because they knew at 6 o'clock they needed to be in there getting in line. The alarm went off. They got up eagerly. And as Esther looked out the window, she saw a herd of eager people beating a path to the line. And by the time they made their way in and snatched their little ticket, they were number 13 of the drop-ins. The room was already full of people who had appointments. They were 13th in line for dropping in. And Esther sat next to Jerry and said, we're pretty far down on the list. And then she said, we could leave the coach for several days. Surely, in the amount of time that we have, they will be able to get to it, as she brought herself back into alignment. And then Jerry had a brilliant idea. He said, you know, the thing that matters most is the tailpipe being a little loose. Why don't we call the Spartan guy, that's the chassis man, and tell him that we are here in case he has some free time before they even work us up the line. And Esther is thinking, breaking the rules, breaking the rules, breaking the rules. And then she thought, we have nothing to lose. All they have to say is, no, it isn't a good idea. And so Jerry made the call, and the man said, we will bring your coach in at 9 o'clock, and we will take care of that. And so Jerry and Esther's hearts were singing. They sat in the coach, and at 9 o'clock, the nice man came and took their coach in and did the thing on the list that mattered the most. And now it was easier than ever for them to line up because the thing that mattered most was tended to. And Esther began saying, we could drive off now and it would have been worth the trip. See how she is bringing herself more into alignment? And then the woman inside said, we will send your service advisor out. They will come sometime in the next little while, and they will let you know what the procedure for scheduling you will be. And then that person never arrived that whole day. So Jerry and Esther are sitting and working and doing other things, and all day long Esther is looking out the window. And all day long Esther is wondering where they are, and all day long Esther is massaging herself back into alignment. All day long the potential for feeling discomfort was there. And all day long the beginning of discomfort came, and all day long Esther talked herself back into alignment, talked herself back into alignment, talked herself back into alignment, again and again. Did she stay there? No. Did she get there? Yes. Did she stay there? No. Did she get there? Yes. And finally, at the end of the day, 5 minutes before everyone was going home, they start very early and quit very early, the woman came out and looked at the list and said to Jerry and Esther, we can take you in tomorrow and we can get it all done tomorrow. Esther was leaping for joy. And so the next morning, bright and early, they came and took the coach in, and a beehive of eager, talented, willing workers swarmed. One fixed this drawer, one fixed that drawer, one changed this, one did this one. And the 7 items on the list, which was one more than was allowed, were completed by noon. And Esther said, more than the satisfaction at getting these things that will make our life better tended to is the satisfaction that we created a sort of miracle. We lined up with well-being and lived it. The man in the coach next door has been in the parking lot for 2 months. The man across the way had been there the week before.